This week marks the one-year anniversary of the signing of the Abraham Accords, establishing diplomatic ties between Israel and the Gulf states of the United Arab Emirates and the Kingdom of Bahrain. Now, one of those helping to develop the new relationship between Israel and Bahrain is Huda Nunu, Bahrain's former ambassador to the United States. She was, in fact, the first Jewish woman from any Arab or Muslim state to serve as envoy to Washington. Well, earlier I spoke with Ambassador Nunu from the Bahraini capital, Manama, about the impact of the Abraham Accords on her country, her community, and herself. Ambassador Huda Nunu, thank you for joining us on I-24 News.
Thank you, Calev, for having me on.
Now, it's been 1 year since the signing of the Abraham Accords. We have some perspective. How do you assess the impact in general of the Accords on Bahrain and, of course, on the Gulf region as well?
We are very grateful for His Majesty for taking the bold leadership in the signing of the Abraham Accords. The relationship between Bahrain and Israel in the last year has just been amazing and has moved very, very fast. And I can give you some examples of the collaborations that we've had. For instance, on the water side, on the waterfront, we've had Mekarot, who have signed an MOU with the Electricity and Water Authority in Bahrain for exchange of water technologies. On the banking side, we've had Bank Hapoalim and Bank Leumi sign with National Bank of Bahrain, one of Bahrain's largest banks. On the health side, we have had the largest public hospital in Bahrain, Salmania Hospital, sign an MOU with Sheba Medical Center, and it will be for exchange of programs and exchange of doctors. And on the tourism side, Gulf Air is going to be starting its route to Israel, to Tel Aviv, twice a week on September the 30th. On the social front, we've also had delegations going to Israel on the social front. For instance, we had the first group from Sharaka who went to Tel Aviv around Hanukkah, and they lit Hanukkah candles at the Western Wall. We've had a group of Bahrainis go on the Israel Is group. And we've also had lots of delegations coming in from Israel to Bahrain. So that exchange of delegations and exchange of people going and coming back has been amazing, because we've been able to show them what we have here in Bahrain. And also the Bahrainis going to Israel are learning about the Israel site as well.
Right. Now, I also want to ask you now specifically, you are a member of Bahrain's Jewish community, which I think most of the world wasn't even very much aware of until the Abraham Accords. We've learned a lot about it. And of course, I would imagine the impact has been tremendous on your community there.
Yes, so we are from the very small Jewish community in Bahrain. The Jewish community started basically in the 1880s. There was a group from Iraq that came out. They were on their way to India. They stopped in Bahrain. They liked what they saw, and they stayed here. At the height, we were about 1,500 people. We're now down to about 35 people, less than 50 people, basically. And I'm related to all of them, either from my mother's side or my father's side. So for the Jewish community to have the Abraham Accords, it's been amazing, because we can now actually travel to Israel. We can see our family in Israel. Our family in Israel can come and see us in Bahrain. We do not have to go to London for a wedding or to the United States for a wedding. We can actually do it in our own countries. And that's hopefully going to be happening very soon when the first flights of Gulf Air start on September the 30th. I'm looking forward to being able to visit Israel and seeing my family there. So the biggest impact has been the travel, that we can actually now go to Israel.
Right. Let me ask, if I can ask you about that. You spoke generally, personally, because I just read a comment you just made that you didn't even know if you'd even get to Israel personally, and now you've made 2 trips and you're up. So how did that feel? Just the impact on your own life?
It was a dream come true. So when I was ambassador in the States, and people always ask me, have you ever been to Israel? And my answer would be, no, Bahrain doesn't have diplomatic relations with Israel. So I cannot go to Israel. And it was always a dream that I would have loved to go there. And in November, when I got that call from the foreign minister's office to say that I would be with them on that trip to Israel, I could not believe that it was actually happening. It was a dream come true, literally a dream come true. And landing in Israel was amazing. I've never been there. I ended up going. We went to for our meetings. I had a chance to go to the Western Wall, my first time ever, and it was just very euphoric. And within that 1 week, I ended up going to Israel again. So it was twice in 1 week. I haven't been back yet, but I'm definitely going back in October. So I would look forward to that.
Right. Now, you mentioned Gulf Air, that I believe it's October 4th. Am I correct? They're going to start these twice weekly flights.
It's actually September the 30th. They brought it forward.
Okay, they moved it forward, so that's great.
Yeah.
Do you anticipate that we're going to see the kind of travel? It's certainly developed more on the UAE end, and there is still coronavirus is still a factor. But do you anticipate that we'll start seeing tourism develop? And many Israelis just were taken by surprise at how the warmth of the relationship that's been developing with the people of the Gulf. So how do you see the potential there?
Definitely, I see a lot of tourists coming into Bahrain. We're actually talking to a lot of tour operators in Israel who have an interest. And what we're doing for Bahrain is adding basically like an add-on would be to spend half a day with the Jewish community. So basically seeing the newly renovated synagogue. We also have a functional cemetery in Bahrain, so going to the cemetery and having something to do with the Jewish community here, so they get a feel of what we are here. Like you said, it's not everyone knew there was a Jewish community in Bahrain. When I became ambassador to the United States, it made the news and then died down a little bit. But with the Abraham Accords, we've come out into the front again. So I think it's important to show people how we actually live here. We've always lived together. We've always coexisted. Bahrain is a land of coexistence. Next to the synagogue, there is the mosques, there is the Hindu temple. We don't differentiate with religion, so we all live together. We all live happily together. So I think that's very important for people to come in and see how we actually live here. It's not something that I'm just talking about it. They need to feel it as well. A few weeks ago, we had the first bar mitzvah in the synagogue, in the newly renovated synagogue, and we were able to use we read from the Torah that was commissioned in the name of His Majesty by Jared Kushner. So it was just thrilling to be in that space, in that synagogue, and be able to do all this.
Right. Now, of course, you are a diplomat yourself, and Israel now has appointed an ambassador, its ambassador to Bahrain. And I believe even tomorrow, the new Bahraini ambassador is going to present his credentials to the President Herzog. So maybe just we talked on the human level, on the diplomatic level, just how exciting that is for you to see how this has developed. And now coming to that 1 year anniversary really solidified.
It's actually amazing that we have actually got to the stage where we have an ambassador going, and Ambassador Khalid Al-Jalahma and I worked together in Washington, D.C. Ambassador Khalid was actually the deputy chief of mission. So I've worked with him. I know him very well, and he's a great friend. So he's going to be doing an amazing job in Israel to create to further the relations. Within a year, so much has happened, and to actually have our embassy and our ambassador there at this time is an opportune moment. We also Israel has also named their ambassador to Bahrain. So currently we have a head of mission. But Ambassador Itan Naye will hopefully be coming, I'm not sure when, but sometime soon. So it's the relationship is definitely being soldered even further.
All right. Well, Ambassador Huda Nunu, I hope maybe in one of your future visits to Israel that we'll be able to host you here in person in the I-24 News studio. Thank you for joining us on this occasion.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. I look forward to joining you soon. Take care.